Greetings, and thanks so much for taking time out of your very busy day to check out CREDC's Grow Clark County podcast. I'm Marnie Farnes, Director of Relationships and Strategy, and for today's podcast, I'll be talking with two Clark County business representatives who will share their experience in the world of exporting. Will Massia with Lassios Bag and Elizabeth Dick of TigerStop. Before you jump into the unknown sea of international trade, I'm sure you have lots of questions, and so this is a great place to start. Clark County is such a supportive community, and I'm thrilled to share that several sponsors stepped up to support small businesses by way of this program. A big thank you to Firestone Pacific Foods, Perfect Company, and TigerStop. Their generous support and sponsorship is a big part of why we can make this podcast available. Also, another big supporter of business in Clark County is IQ Credit Union. Thank you for agreeing to be our presenting sponsor, and thank you for your partnership. And before we jump into today's episode, here's Julie Ahrens with IQ to share a few words. Julie?
Hey, business owners, thank you so much for logging in and clicking in today. We're super excited that you're joining us. My name is Julie Ahrens, also known as IQ Julie, and I'm blessed to work for IQ Credit Union, your local nonprofit, non-bank financial institution in town. We've been around since 1940 helping business owners business dreams come true. So whether you're a startup business and you have this dream and you're not ready to take it to the next step, or maybe you've done this for a really long time and you're ready to get out of business, so maybe you need help with succession planning or retirement planning. Whatever stage you're at in your business dream and in your business journey, IQ Credit Union is ready to help you. We've got a large team of business loan officers, business bankers, business account specialists, and we would love to partner with you. So thank you so much for joining us. We're super proud to sponsor the CREDC live podcast series. Excited you joined us, and IQ Credit Union is super excited to be part of this important series, helping business owners' dreams come true. So next time you need a business loan, business account, or some other business service, we hope you'll consider IQ Credit Union. You'll be glad you did. Enjoy.
Hi, Elizabeth and Will.
Hello. How are you, Marnie?
Great. I am thrilled that you both agreed to join me. It's great.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for this opportunity.
For sure. So as I told both of you, and I'll tell listeners, Grow Clark County podcasts are aimed at supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs. So the topic today on exporting will be a good one. And you both have different experiences and vantage points, which will be definitely relevant to a variety of businesses and situations. So,
good.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
can offer.
Yeah. Yes. So let's just jump in and start with you, Elizabeth. Maybe you can share a little bit about yourself and TigerStop.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marnie. So my name's Elizabeth. I am the Sales and Marketing Director at TigerStop, and TigerStop is a manufacturer out of Vancouver, Washington. We essentially, the easiest way to describe it is we replace the need for a tape measure. We make an automated tape measure. And one of the areas that we address is manufacturing problems. So we like to consider ourselves the solution to problems with inefficiencies and waste and accuracy, yields, productivity. So it's really where we step in, and we've been manufacturing since 1994 here in Vancouver, Washington, and we also have a global presence. So we manufacture out of Virden, Netherlands, and we sort of got started. Actually, my mother and father started the business 27, almost 28 years ago, sort of accidentally. My father had a cabinetry shop, a kitchen cabinet shop, and he suffered a lot of issues with finding skilled labor, folks who could cut material, whether it be wood or vinyls, plastics, accurately and repeatably. So he had a lot of waste, a lot of miscuts, a lot of rework, created a lot of bottlenecks downstream. So he decided that he would invent the machine to solve his own problems. And my mother essentially said, all right, I support you, but if this doesn't work, you have to get a real job. And he went to his first trade show. They both went. My mother actually sold the first 10 machines, and the rest is sort of history. So then came the issue of creating and manufacturing and actually getting the machines to customers. So
yeah,
that's TigerStop in a nutshell.
love it. Go Mary.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Oh, that's great. And I can't wait to kind of jump more into how you got started over there in the Netherlands and elsewhere. So that's coming up soon. Yeah, good. Hey, Will, tell us about you and Lassios Bag.
Well, so Lassios Bag was started in 2001, roughly, and we are a cut and sew textile manufacturer in Vancouver, Washington. We operate out of 26,000 square feet here. We produce products everywhere from retail brands, very well-known national, international brands. We produce their product, and then we also produce our own house brands. We have product market segmentation in quilting and sewing, in the outdoor industry, in the work at height and safety environments, construction and industrial. And then we do a host of other OEM projects that we work on for other brands that are everything from a medical device carrying case to a knife sheath. So a wide variety of products that we produce. I am the, managing partner of the company. I've pretty much share most of my time in the R&D design. I'm a designer by trade. And so I spend most of my time in product development and the sales and marketing of those products and channel integration for our products as they go to market.
Very good. So you both are creative people in the sense that you're both in marketing, and so you've kind of got that business / creative thing happening.
Absolutely. We like to consider ourselves a marketing company that just so happens to manufacture machinery.
Yeah.
There you go.
Branding is everything. The tiger, fast and accurate every time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very good. So what I'm hoping that listeners will take away from this episode is that exporting can be a great way to take your business, to its next level, but not always. And so sometimes it's best just to focus domestically. And so you both bring just great experiences with this topic to shed some light on both realities. And so, Will, I want to start with you and talk a little bit about Lassios Bag's exporting story.
Sure.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's sad. It's a really sad story.
Oh, no.
Not in a good way. In a good way. So we had the idea. We work with a major sewing machine manufacturer. There's really only 3 in the world, and we work with one of them who asked us to start to place our products in Canada. And so, in conjunction with some of their efforts, we did that. And we had the idea that there may be an opportunity for us to sell our products in Canada in greater volume with the dealer network that we knew existed there. So we went through a program with Impact Washington and Export Council, and we did some work on identifying how we were going to do that. We put a plan together. I think it was well enough thought out that we could justify the venture. And so we started by positioning products in Canada with distribution partners, and we placed a fair amount. And then from there, we did not realize the expectations that we had. And so it was one of those situations where we were holding on too long. We thought we had done enough research on the market, and we hadn't. And we did not understand our consumer in Canada near as well as we thought we would. So being that, basically Canada and the United States are so aligned in so many ways, not only, geographically, but just in general culture, there was a massive difference, though, in the behavior of the consumer in Canada. And we didn't expect it to be as dramatic as we thought, as it ended up being. So our sales were flat, and we ended up holding on to a lot of operational costs up there for far too long that really started to affect our bottom line. And in addition to some unexpected things that occurred, like having to actually open bank accounts in Canada, dealing with exchanges in Canada, dealing with VAT taxes, inventory movement across the border became logistically more difficult over time. Our partners were not consuming, and we ended up with loads and loads of product in Canada that were basically orphaned and unfortunately unsold. So that was it was my project, and I took it on, and I realized quickly that it wasn't going to be the success we hoped it would be. And I did hold on to it a bit too long. So I learned a lot in the process. So great opportunity to learn something.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, because that is, obviously with everything in life, whether it be business or personal life, whatever. I mean, things are risky. And so you don't know often until you get in and give it your best. So, and like you said, it was an opportunity to learn. And we're going to talk more about in a little bit here about some of the lessons you learned and what other businesses can maybe learn from you to hopefully save themselves from making some of those same mistakes.
Yeah, and I do have to say that we have had success exporting product into different countries. This was the first time that we tried to make a significant physical impact in a country where we were placing a large volume of goods in that country to move. And it was a dramatically different effort than what we were used to. So in this particular case, it had a higher risk than we realized.
Sure. So, all right. So Elizabeth, your story is different. And so we want to hear from you as well.
Yeah. So I think everything for us really comes back towards our mission. TigerStop works on supplying equipment that helps lots of manufacturers in tons of industries, whether it's metalworking and woodworking, aerospace, automotive. What we like to do, though, is we want to empower those local manufacturers to be globally competitive. We want to help manufacturers create communities that are sustainable around those organizations. So we kind of look at everything. There's actually a really great economic indicator called the Manufacturing Multiplier Index, which is for every job created in manufacturing, 3 to 5 additional jobs are created. So we are very pro helping other manufacturers do what they do better so they can be more profitable, so that they're creating local communities. And we want to do that sort of on a global scale. So when we set out initially, we wanted to make sure that the manufacturing organization that we set up abroad really kind of emulated that. We wanted to be able to export goods and then have local vendors and local suppliers and local labor help finish those goods and help manufacture those products into end products and then sell those into local markets. So Europe for us was a really good opportunity. We had gone to some international trade shows and we figured out, okay, this is a viable product in these industries. We connected with local partners who spoke the native language, which was key for us. In the Netherlands, speaking Dutch is essential. The Dutch are very, very educated people too, and they're in close proximity to France, Belgium, Germany. So having a partner who could speak all of those languages was very key for us as well. And it's sort of a calculated risk. Anytime you have a venture, you kind of think, okay, what are we willing to lose what we sink into this if we try it out? But it was well thought out in that sense. And so I guess that was probably close to 20 years ago that we started manufacturing in the Netherlands and serving the local European markets. So that is sort of everything that kind of comes back to our mission statement of how we can export, but do so sustainably.
So you started in the Netherlands, I'm gathering, and so, or
In
Europe.
Vancouver, Washington.
Well, right, in
Originally, yeah.
Vancouver, but when you first started exporting, you started in Europe. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we were exporting a product to a manufacturing facility there, and then we were actually continuing the manufacturing process so then we have local vendors who can supply products to finish those, and local labor, and then we sell those products all throughout Europe.
And are you beyond Europe now?
We are. So we, and not in terms of manufacturing, but we have distribution partners pretty much all over the globe. We have them in Africa and Australia, North America, South America, Canada, Mexico. So really having cultural sensitivity, I think, is very important. Understanding, how to communicate a message. We could have an advertisement out in the US that if we sent in Europe, or it could offend the local population accidentally. We have some taglines that are funny to folks here, but maybe not so there. So just understanding who you're talking to and your demographics, I think is important.
I've read that, and that's so curious. What did you have a team working on this, or did you have somebody who just on your team that was just really good at doing all this type of research? What were the early?
I'd have to say it was really my father. So he had experience working in the industry, in the woodworking industry. He made connections for decades, had attended all the international shows. Well, obviously now with COVID doing that, but there's a lot you can do online these days. But I think, once we set up shop here in the US, we tried to just kind of figure out how we could find, I guess it's a culture carrier in Europe. So keep the same culture of the company, but at the same time have the sensitivities to sort of the local markets. And then there's a whole host of advice in terms of just the logistics of setting up that I could go into, or if we want to touch on a little bit later. But
for sure, we will.
What I think is really cool, Will and Marnie, is that we're both sort of small to medium-sized businesses. And I think a lot of folks can think, wow, I'm way too small to even start this adventure into exporting. But I think it's $2.5 trillion of exports come out of SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises. So we are really kind of at the forefront here. We're not talking about these big Fortune 500 multinational companies. It's power in numbers. So I don't think people should preclude themselves from the conversation.
No, exactly. And that's exactly why I wanted to do this episode, because, if nothing else, it's worth considering. And like Will, your points are definitely useful in the sense that doing research and doing your homework and not making some of the quote unquote same mistakes you made, and definitely want to touch more on that. But if nothing else, I think this is a great conversation and a great consideration for any business that is open to it. So.
Absolutely.
So, go ahead, Will.
Well, it's interesting. When we first started talking about making a big push into exports, we thought that actually the familiarity with Canada would be the wise choice because it'd be easy. And that was,
I was going to ask you.
That was such a underestimation of what the effort would be. We actually have an easier time exporting to Europe than we do to Canada, believe it or not. And mostly that's because the market behavior of the consumer is more in line in Europe, in England, and actually down in Australia as well, for this particular product line that we were selling. But we just took for granted that the proximity and the kind of similar nature of Canada and the US and would bridge any gap, and it'd be an easy process. And it really did not turn out that way. To to your point, having the proper research and administrative support to do it is really critical. And I failed on that, to be honest. I just underestimated how much effort it was going to take. And I ended up having to pull a lot of my staff in to work on this project once it was rolling. And then I started to realize that, okay, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be as far as the effort is. And I don't know that we're really staffed right for this. And I don't know that we're going to see the results that we're looking for. So we promoted it for about 9 months. And then after 9 months, we knew that this was not going to go much longer. So we discontinued it after 13 months and decided that we would just go transactionally based instead of trying to do a program-based export initiative.
Will, did you have a distribution partner? Were like dealers selling your product, or were you?
Yeah, sort of. And this was where the challenge actually came, was that there was a competitive nature of the company that we partnered with initially and the distribution channels in the country. And they were actually competing against each other. And so it was very territorial. And so, Canada's not a huge market. It's small. And that's another thing. Because Canada's small, we looked at it as, oh, this is low risk, right? We're not going to have to put too much in there, but it's still risk. If it's 90% risky, it's still 90% risk, So we looked at it as though this should be somewhat innocuous and not too painful to transact. We didn't realize the complexities of the relationships between the distribution partners in Canada and how they were going to react to each other. One having it, many of the dealers they're really split east and west, because the center of the country is, fairly less populated. So there was definitely a territorial aspect to it. There was a lot of protectionism, and then on top of that, a reserved consumer behavior that we didn't expect. So that distribution piece for us crippled us because it really isolated us to half of our market that we thought we were going after.
Okay, so setting up just proper maybe sales channels ahead of time. Okay, we're going to go through dealer here and direct here and sell e-commerce here.
Yeah, and the challenge was like e-commerce was anemic. It really did not prove to be what it is here in the U.S. We were doing about 10% of what we do in the U.S. overall, which is not, unrelative to the population size and disparity there. Where we saw challenges was the like I said, the consumer really drove it, right? But also the consumers were our distributors as well. And they were very slow to adopt. They were very cautious about how they were going to take this product on. They were very worried about the nature of the relationship with other distributors. Like I said, it was territorial and protectionist, but in a very, very nice way, to use a Canadian term, right? They were like, oh, no, if they're doing that, then we shouldn't even touch this. I'm like, but they don't serve this segment of the population. Like, no, that's okay. We're not gonna do that. So it was unique. I mean, we're a unique brand in that market. We're a unique brand in the market segmentation in that particular category. And I think I think my eyes were bigger than my appetite at that point.
Yeah, but lesson learned, and now you're sharing with others. So for sure. Okay, so let's say a business decides, it's time to start thinking about this, to perhaps get the ball rolling as far as export. What are some tips or some insights on how a business might investigate target markets or do their homework, maybe researching potential competitors or different strategies? Elizabeth, do you want to start?
Sure. Google, I think, is step one.
Yes.
Google. You need to find out number one, is your product unique? Is it a service or a product that industry or market would not have otherwise if you weren't in the picture? If you're selling a commodity product, or are you selling something that's a little bit more specialized? So I guess for us, it's sort of, we were able to kind of enter some of these markets because we're offering a product that is affordable to people and it's new to them, and it's sort of an ancillary tool that they can attach. Like if somebody already has a drill or a chop saw or an iron worker or a very basic tool to make something, they attach our product to it. So for us, it's just a question of barrier to entry. So we were able to determine kind of fairly quickly, this is 20 or so years ago, that this is sort of an innovative product that no one had ever seen. We were at trade shows back then, and the market feedback was, oh my goodness, wow, where has this been? I need one now. So I think now it's a little bit trickier without having those kinds of international trade shows, but you can still do a lot online.
Yeah.
I think social media is a huge untapped resource for folks in manufacturing. I don't think the average manufacturer does a good job with their social media, but I think there's endless opportunity there. So, and then I think talking to local organizations, Columbia River Economic Development Committee, for example, talking to government officials, the U.S. Department of Commerce, I think is a great resource. So
yeah,
I would start there, doing homework.
Good thoughts.
I think you brought up a really good point, Elizabeth, is that how unique is your product, right? And that's one thing that we have a very unique design in our product, but the product itself can be replicated. And on top of that, we're importing the product and then sending it as an export, right? So there's an additional layer of, I guess, dilution in its integrity. And when I say that, I mean, we lose the opportunity to really control the narrative around it because we're not ultimately manufacturing that one product. Now, it's a separate component of our business. It wasn't unique enough. The designs are fantastic and all of that, but they weren't unique enough for our competitor out of Asia to replicate exactly what we were doing and flood the market at very inexpensive numbers. And that coupled with the fact that we really didn't do enough research into the market, or at least didn't have the best understanding of the market, really it accelerated our failure, so to speak. And do that research. I think I said this to you, Marty, before we recorded this. It's the research piece is so critical. It's like what Einstein said, right? He said, if I have a problem, I'm going to spend 95% of the time identifying it and 5% coming up with a solution. And I think I was probably 50-50, right? I was looking for the solution the whole time. So shame on me, but it really does pay to do your homework.
But I think that brings up another interesting point, which is IP and how to protect your IP if you are abroad. Do you have a product that you can actually even protect, or
or the wherewithal to protect, right?
Right. Or can you trademark it? Or if you are going into certain countries and markets that are known to quickly, cheaply replicate something, and their perception from the buyer is that, well, these are the same product, then is it even worth going into those markets? I just have a funny story. I was in one of those countries, and I was speaking to an individual who thought that she worked for Apple because it was such a good copy of the Apple store.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That she literally thought she was an employee for Apple, but it was a copy. So there are markets and countries where they can get away with that, and it's very difficult to control anything related to your product, how it's made, how it's sold. The narrative. So you have to just test waters, do your homework.
That makes me think, I think, Will, you had mentioned at one point when you and I were talking prior to this, that you had mentioned about just some of the corruption that's out there. And so I don't know if either of you have anything you want to share about how to kind of learn the tricks of the trade, so to speak, in regards to different cultures have different standards and different maybe ethical ideas.
Yeah.
So
it's funny, the State Department publishes like a corruption index for every country. And I obviously don't know how accurate it is, but I can tell you that by looking at the numbers and the countries that we've basically manufactured in or exported to, they're probably pretty close, right? And we've had great successes in having local people assist us and get us through a lot of the, I guess, what you would consider low-level corruption issues that you're going to face, and you will face it. There's no doubt that in certain countries you're going to have taxes that you're not familiar with, that probably aren't real, that are going to come across. Businesses just performed differently in different countries, and it's culturally acceptable. And I think, as you know, in the US, we think we're squeaky clean and we do everything right, and then we get to a country and we're like, wow, this is so corrupt. And I'm like, after a while you're like, nah, this is just the way business is done. And just you accept it and you move on, and you are going to face at some point. It depends, the more countries you visit, the more opportunity for that.
So how important is it to learn the regulatory pieces in different markets or places that you might try to get into? And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, Google's a good one. Funny enough, I found that most of my competitors are very collaborative. Right. And so when we talk, we're friends. I know many of my friends that are in the bag space or in the textile space are competitors. And we chat all the time, and we share these stories and we share information about how we might get something done. And we became much more collaborative. This might be different for you, Elizabeth, but in our industry, we suffered this attrition for so many years where there was hardly any of us left. In early 2000, I mean, we were one of the last US bag companies, and that's where the name came from. And we really found that by reaching out and talking to some of our competitors, they became allies, and we're still really good friends, and we were able to help each other bridge gaps where we needed to. And that's been really helpful. The State Department has helped. The U.S. Commercial Services helps quite a bit. There's so many resources out there. It does take time, and it does take a lot of research, and you have to spend a lot of time in the weeds on some of this to figure it out. You're still never going to get it all. I mean, things are going to pop up all the time, but
things will pop up.
Yeah,
absolutely, everywhere, all the time. And I think there's a great resource, which is, I should get the name here. It's actually, there's a basic guide to exporting. It's 240 something pages long, so it's really not the Spark noted version. But the U.S. Commercial Service has this PDF. It's fantastic. And you will think of things that you would never have considered when you're going through it, just to kind of check off. So
that's good.
Whether your product is even being banned for being sold in that country.
Absolutely.
Is there a U.S. trade agreement that you are not even aware of, or an anti-dumping agreement, or is there some prohibition of your product being sold into that market? It's things that you want to consider.
For sure. So there's lots of benefits, obviously, to jumping into the world of international trade. There's also drawbacks. Perhaps both of you can share how your business has benefited, but then maybe a few of the drawbacks. We've heard some of the drawbacks, obviously, from you, Will, but what have been the positives too?
For me, it's really been a matter of refocusing. I think what we were doing was we were spreading out beyond our borders prematurely, because we hadn't really captured the entire audience that we have in the United States alone. And what I refocused my efforts on was, how do we go deeper into the people that are in our tent already? And how do we support them better? And we've been a better company for that. because we've been able to manage our clients and exceed their expectations versus, really where we spread ourselves too thin at one point. And,
Sure.
that's been the biggest benefit. And we've still had continued growth year over year without having to go outside of our four walls yet, which is
Sure.
great.
That's good.
That's great.
How about you, Elizabeth?
Benefits for us of just it goes back to the mission again. I'm sorry, we're going to repeat it again, empowering local manufacturers to be globally competitive. So we really find a lot of satisfaction in helping create manufacturing communities across the globe that are very, very sustainable, that can serve their own markets and can help keep communities. I mean, if you look in Detroit, for example, when steel was taken out of Detroit and automotive industries, it decimates communities.
Yeah.
So being able to provide jobs and is very, very important to us. I mean, in addition to, obviously there's like the business side, which is everybody wants to have a paycheck, which is great. The branding benefits of creating a global brand that's recognized. But it definitely has not been easy. It's called work for a reason. And we've definitely made mistakes. I mean, there are a lot of lessons that we've learned about what to do, what not to do. And I would just say, step one, if you do decide to go down this venture, is to get a really good freight forwarder.
Yeah.
You need to have a really, really good partner who can help organize all of your shipments and logistics and can help get the product to the final destination. We've used DHL, Main Freight, Omni Logistics, but you really need to have partners. This isn't something you can really do yourself without having some of that infrastructure set up, and you need a website that's global. We've tried to get away with websites before that had auto translation functions, and we were hoping that could work, and the messaging is completely distorted and it's not getting to the audience correctly. And you really have to invest, I think, in a multi-site that has actual native speakers creating content around your manufacturing or your company, so that you can communicate your messaging. Heat treated pallets. That's something that you probably don't think about every day.
Right.
If you're exporting, you need to have a huge stash of those. So the little things.
That. Yeah, tell us about those.
You must have them when you're exporting goods internationally. You have to everything has to be sanitized and treated and clean and clear from cooties, so that when your product gets across internationally, no cooties. Certain things you just expect to be sort of problematic, like ocean shipments. There will be delays. When that cargo gets on that ship, it's gone, and there will be delays. We just saw this huge example in the Suez Canal of what can go wrong when you're exporting goods. So conversations around air freight, ocean freight, and then there's added expenditures.
Right.
So it's a constant kind of juggle, and you also have to pay attention to what's going around. Right now, the global supply chain is sort of out of whack. Like lumber prices, for example, are up like 230%. So if you're producing a product or you're exporting a product that has any sort of lumber in it right now, you really have to look at kind of global pricing structures and when to buy, when to sell. It's interesting. So it's not easy, but it doesn't have to be so daunting.
And there's a lot of good partners that can help you with it. Sometimes just picking the right distribution partner, they'll handle the majority of this for you. And that can solve your problem. We have that in Germany and in the UK for us, where we really don't do much other than put product on a pallet and get it ready for shipment. And
a heat treated pallet.
A heat treated pallet, yes. And obviously understanding the labeling requirements of each country is important. I mean, there's a lot of little nuances that you have to go through, but those distribution partners oftentimes will facilitate so much of that, and they'll handle so much of it for us because they want the opportunity to sell your product. Mm-hmm. And that's just a great advantage to leverage.
Absolutely.
That's a good thought. Shifting directions here. One question I want to be sure I ask is, so like if my business starts the exporting thing happening, and it's to be expected, I think, for many businesses for it to be bumpy at first. And so, Will, you talked about the first 9 months being flat. What can a business expect? And I know it just depends, but when should a business kind of not panic, but realize, how do they spot the difference between this is just the beginnings of a new process and this isn't working?
Well, I think, ultimately what we didn't do well was set a defined budget for how, both in time and in resources that we were going to potentially put into this. And I think that's important because there should be a scope and there should be a range that you're comfortable with. And if you've exceeded that range, there has to be some hard decisions, but that should be established ahead of the venture. And because we're a small company, right? I mean, I'm 25 employees, so I wear a lot of different hats. I take the garbage out. I flip burgers when it's
Sure.
picnic day, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I take for granted the fact that I can get a little bit lackadaisical about how I go about things. I'll say, oh, you know what, let's just stretch it out for a couple more weeks and see how it goes, right?
Great.
And that discipline I've learned over time, and I am much more rigid about defining what the scope of the project is and sticking to it. I think that's just good advice, although I'm probably not one to give great advice. I think that is good.
You are.
You are giving great advice.
You are giving great advice. Yeah, for sure.
I just don't listen to my own. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, you learn as you go, right? Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I have to kind of parrot everything that you said. You sort of have to put the plan together ahead of time and invest in it, what you're willing to lose.
Yes.
So set that, define that budget, and it's sort of like any engineering initiative, you always beta test. You're never, even anything you do, you're never going to be fully live. Even if you're launching a website, you're going to launch the beta test, find all the bugs, fix the bugs, release version 2. So I don't think it should be such it's such an endeavor. You should dip your toe in.
There you go.
Yeah.
So winding down here, curious, and you've shared so much information. So, but I want to give an opportunity in closing for you to share any little bits of advice to others that we haven't already shared.
Great question.
Find a great mentor that's had success like Elizabeth. Find someone that's had great success and see if you can extract some of that knowledge ahead of time. Because I can tell you, if I had someone that would have guided me through that a little bit more, we would have done things differently. We may have had success, but I wouldn't say that I really, I used some basic counsel, leadership, and things like that were effective, but it really didn't tell the whole story. It didn't tell me exactly what I was going to experience. And so, finding a good mentor in the process might help.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody is interested in connecting with a business that's a few steps ahead, if any of you reach out to me, then I'll be happy to try to connect you. And that's one of the things that he does do. So for sure.
You do that so well.
Yeah.
We really do. So
thank you.
It's so important. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, did you have anything, or it's okay if you don't, but
I just had something, it popped out of my head for a second.
Okay.
I think it was just around just sort of continuous education. People are buying very differently and it's constantly changing. There are constantly new ways to buy products. There are new social media platforms being developed every 5 seconds. We just had to create a TikTok account for the first time. I have
Oh my
no
gosh.
idea how to use TikTok, but I think in order to reach the next generation of
Sure.
buyers, we're gonna try it out. So it's sort of being
Some
flexible and
TigerStop
adaptive.
videos. Some TigerStop videos.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm probably 20 years older than the average user on that platform. So
They're so entertaining though, aren't they?
they really are, actually. You can kind of go down some rabbit holes there.
Oh yeah.
But I think constantly educating yourself and being aware of changes in buyer patterns, I think.
No, that's good advice.
Sage advice.
Well, thank you both for sharing your experiences, and all of your experiences can be celebrated for sure, even if it sort of seems like maybe they can't or they shouldn't be. They should be.
Fail well and fail often.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think this is true in business for sure. So
absolutely.
Anyway, really appreciate hearing about your resiliency and the grit that you both have shown. And I'm so thrilled that both of your businesses are in Clark County. Thrilled.
And we're thrilled to have you in such close proximity. So thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to join your podcast.
Absolutely.
This is the exciting part of my job, is connecting with great people like you and seeing your businesses, through the mostly good times, but even the times of struggle, because that's just how the world works, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Well, thank you both. And
thank you.
Can't wait to talk to you again.
See you soon.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Will and Elizabeth, for sharing your experiences. So listeners, as you can see, sometimes the world of exporting is messy and challenging. It can also be the very thing that takes your business from good to great. So no matter what, it doesn't hurt to consider the possibility. Thanks so much for joining in, and we have more podcasts coming. One in July and another in September, all geared toward helping small businesses to succeed. The team at CRDC is dedicated to helping your business. If you have any questions following this podcast, be sure and reach out and we'll do our very best to help. Until next time, take care.